Happy to be joined by former UFC lightweight champion Anthony Showtime Pettis, who's going to be taking on Benson Henderson December 15th, Karate Combat 43. Anthony, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. Can't complain.
Tell me how this all came together with you linking up with Karate Combat.
Yeah, it honestly came out of nowhere. I was getting ready for another boxing match in February, and I got a phone call from a mutual friend from Karate Combat side and my side, and they were saying, are you interested in competing in Karate Combat? And I already was a fan of Karate Combat, but I just didn't know. I didn't know who ran it or who was the main guys of it. And then once they presented me the opportunity, my new hometown, Las Vegas, Nevada. I already live here. I've been here, based out of here for the last 10 years almost. And then, the opponent, it was like a no-brainer. It was like, a trilogy match. It's December 15th. It worked out perfectly on my timeline. And then they sent the contract, and man, we got to work right away.
It's my understanding you're still under contract with PFL. I know this isn't MMA. How were they about you taking this? Was it fairly easy to say, hey, look, I'm going to do this thing that's a bit different, but it's not quite MMA?
Yeah, I mean, I signed all my contracts open where I can compete boxing. I can compete anything besides mixed martial arts, and this isn't mixed martial arts. So yeah, I didn't. The PFL is so cool with the way they do business, man. Honestly, like the upper echelon of PFL, those guys are just very, very cool. I mean, you saw what they did with Francis Ngannou, letting him do his boxing match and getting his money. So I boxed Roy Jones Jr. earlier this year. I haven't done MMA at all. This is my second fight of this year, really, man. And then so it was just keeping me busy, keeping me on track, and I think it's great.
How different is the preparation and the training compared to MMA? Because obviously it's a bit different. We're talking karate here, not full-on martial arts.
There's no grappling, basically, man. So you take away the wrestling and you take away the jiu-jitsu, and it's the same exact striking. There's little rule changes. Obviously, I'm fighting in a pit, not in the cage. You can't do low kicks. You got to do low perennial low kicks. The knee down low kicks. So those are like the little different aspects. But man, basically something I've been doing my whole life. I started with traditional martial arts. I come from a point sparring background, and I think that's why I had a lot of success in mixed martial arts, because my coach, Duke Rufus, comes from a karate background, kickboxing background, and then you mix them in my taekwondo experience. Me and Duke got together, and he didn't try to change me as a fighter. And, that's why you see the flashy moves that I throw and all the crazy stuff I'm able to still do. But in mixed martial arts, I had to dumb down my style a lot just because of the takedowns. I knew if I spun and landed on my back, a guy can get on top of me and control the round, and I'd lose that round. So this allows me to have an open style, man. So like I was saying earlier, when I fight MMA, I have to fight right leg backwards. Unless I'm fighting a orthodox guy, I open stance it. But I fight right leg backwards, and where this style allows me to fight my traditional way. On my traditional career, I always fought right leg forward. So you'll see a mixture of both.
A little bit disappointed we can't replicate the Showtime kick because there's no cage to bounce off, right?
Well, that's even better. I got the pit to run off. I mean, and if
that's
you
true.
had that,
good point.
You had that slant to it. I could take a couple steps. So I made up I didn't make exactly the pit, but I have a section of my wall that's set up for that pit, mostly for defense. I wanted to feel how it felt being on my back on that slant like that. But offensively, it's way easier to run off of that thing than a cage, because the cage is vertically, it's hard to jump off of that and get distance. You got that little slant, and it just gives you that much more. I get way more distance with it.
Any plans to work with Karate Combat after this fight? Is it just like a one fight deal? What would sort of the future look like? Because I know you got a lot on your plate, man. Not even just fighting, but I know management, running a promotion as well. Like what's the future looking like beyond this? Do you know yet?
Yeah, 1,000,000%, man. I mean, once this opportunity came, and I'm allowed to do it, so it's something that I can actually fit into my schedule. I would love to get another belt up there on this wall. And I think this style favors me so much, man. It's like it's kind of made for me. I was just talking to Duke about this yesterday. We were filming with Karate Combat. This is the rule set that's made for my style. Like, I'm allowed to jump, spin, do the crazy moves, but I also have that solid foundation of the striking that it takes to be inside that inside fight game. So I'm excited to go out there and showcase my skill set, man.
Who are you working with this camp? You mentioned you're still working with Duke Rufus. Are you in, like you said, you live in Vegas? Is he out there? Are you in Milwaukee? So yeah, take me through camp a bit, because I don't know if people know exactly like what your training's looking like these days.
Yeah, Duke comes out here, man. So I now that I'm at this level of my career, I don't really train with a team. I bring in my team around me specifically for what I need. So Duke comes out here. He's going to finish camp with me. He's been out here for almost a week now. So mostly game planning. I bring in my sparring partners based on the guy I'm fighting. And luckily I'm in Las Vegas. I got a pick of a whole bunch of guys. Eric Koch, actually one of my former teammates, Southpaw.
I remember him.
The guy that's going to be out. Yeah, he's going to be out there with me for my last week of sparring. He actually gets here tomorrow. So Eric Koch will be here. Sergio Pettis is coming. Little bro, obviously, I got to have him in my corner. I'm still using my boxing coach, Jorge Capatillo. We train at his gym. He'll be my cut man and my wrapping my hands up for this fight. And man, that's my training. I got my striking coach. I got my my boxing coach. I got my sparring partners, and that's basically everything I need. And also, I got a guy here in Las Vegas. He runs Project Wellbeing. Is my main strength and conditioning coach. I've really focused in on that on my off season just to keep my body in shape. Especially when you get older, you got to really focus in on that stuff.
How do you see the fight playing out with you and Benson? Obviously, different rule set, but what's your prediction for this one?
I mean, Ben's a gangster, bro. Like I have nothing but respect for that guy. I fought him twice already. I know what he brings to the table. He's a super competitive guy. But this fighting style, I think, favors my style, man. Like he can't put me on the cage. He can't hold me on the cage, and that's what he did a lot in our last couple fights. He can't take my back. He can't take me down. It's basically solely striking. So I think this is I started with traditional martial arts, point sparring. I come from a Taekwondo background, but then when I met Duke comes from a karate background. He showed me all the same concept of using my Taekwondo point sparring, but making it more effective with the karate, and then adding in the Muay Thai. So that's why me and Duke had so much success. He didn't really try to change me as a fighter. He allowed me to be myself, but just add things to my game. And when we were in the mixed martial arts world, we had to dumb our striking down so much because of if we fall on our back, we could take it down. The guy gets on top of us, we lose the round. Where on this point, I get to go use my full arsenal of striking, and I'm excited to go showcase what I could actually do. There's so many moves that I wasn't able to do in mixed martial arts because of the rule set.
Interesting bit of news. We mentioned PFL there. Obviously, they're merging and buying Bellator. You were part of the merger with the UFC and the WEC. So what was it like to now being, you probably got to be one of the few fighters in the MMA history that has been part of two mergers.
Yeah, man. Honestly, I'm probably one of the few fighters in MMA history that was able to box, non-karate combat, and be
true.
with pretty much every organization. Yeah, every organization of MMA. Yeah, the merger with Bellator, honestly, that came out of nowhere with PFL. They weren't really like sharing what their plans were with the fighters and the athletes. I have a great relationship with Don Davis and Peter Murray. Their concept of doing that was owning the roster, and I think what that was a power move on their end, man. They had the financing to do it. Now they have a huge roster on both, not only the PFL roster they're building up, but the Bellator roster that they just got. It's going to be interesting how they combine the two. But under my understanding is, my next fight is going to be under their pay-per-view format. When Ngannou fights, Clarissa Shields, I think, is going to be back on that one. Kayla Harrison, like all their big stars are going to put on there with their Bellator guys that they now have, and they'll put a pay-per-view format together. And that's more of my style. Like when I did the tournament style in PFL, that favors more of the younger guys, the guys that are up and coming, or the guys, and I hate to say it this way, but that didn't make their money in the sport. A guy that like myself that's kind of established, I favor fighting twice a year, one big fight, two big fights a year on a pay-per-view format, or the right opponents, and that's what they kind of presented to me, and I'm like, yeah, 1,000,000%, I'm down in the game with that.
Have you talked to Sergio about the merger? Obviously, you're on the PFL side. Now you guys are under the same umbrella. If so, how does he feel about all this?
Yeah, Serge, man, he's coming off a loss, and I know how that goes. He's trying to figure himself out. He had a crazy run in the Bellator, man. I mean, what he did in Bellator up to that, that knee injury, and then obviously his last fight. I mean, even beating Patricio, Pitbull. I mean, that dude's one of the Bellator goats. It's just styles make fights. He fell on the wrong end of this last fight, but he's only 30 years old. I'm excited to see what he comes back and does. But I told him, take his time off, man. Like I've been in this position before. Like when I made that run happen in the UFC, I fought RDA. I lost my belt. I tried to rush back into competition. Then I lose a close decision to Eddie Alvarez, which I don't think I lost that fight, but I lose to Eddie Alvarez, and then I lose to Edson Barboza. And I was in a weird spot in my career. I was like, man, like I was in the highest high, just literally on a Wheeze box the year before, and then coming off three losses in a row. So I don't want that for him. I want him to take his time off. He's getting married in March. He's got he gets to enjoy the fruits of his labor for a little bit before I see jump back into a training camp.
What was it like getting to box Roy Jones Jr.?
Man, you talk about that. That was the craziest opportunity that came my way. I was in Cabo San Lucas. It was my birthday, and I get the phone call like, hey, my agent hits me up like, I got an opportunity for you to fight, a boxing fight, and I was already getting ready because I in the PFL. All the whole season PFL, when I moved to Vegas, I started training with Jorge Capatillo. Great boxing coach here, trained Tyson Fury. I mean, most of the Mexican guys train with Jorge Capatillo as well. But when the opportunity came, I'm like, all right, who's the opponent? And they're like, Roy Jones Jr. I'm like, the Roy Jones Jr. Like, no way. And they're like, yeah, it's a real fight. It's not exhibition, 8 rounds. And this is my professional boxing debut. So but the catch was he wanted it at 200 pounds. And at that time, I think I was weighing like 180, 185 pounds. I probably walked 185. And I was like, the first thing I was thinking, like, man, the weight class is going to be a lot for me, because I remember I fought at 45, I fought at 155, I fought 170, and then jumping up 30 pounds at 200 pounds to fight a guy that's in his sport. So that was like the only, like, the scary thing about it. But man, I was like, I can't pass that opportunity up. For me, it was like, if I would have went out there and had a shitty performance, it's my professional boxing debut. But I was pretty confident in my skill set. The guys that I spar now, sparring Caleb Plant before he fought Benavidez. I spar Senna. There's another great champion out here. Pretty much all the guys in Vegas, man. There's so many good boxers. I could hold my own. So I knew, I was like, yeah, I could do this. And man, we did it, man. Roy Jones was coming off of a fight versus Mike Tyson. So the mindset was, all right, if Mike Tyson could have knocked him out, I'm not going to go try to knock this guy out. I'm going to go out there, outpoint him, keep my range, and fight a smart fight. And when I watched that fight back, man, I'm super proud of myself. And obviously, like, the general community is like, hey, he's 56, almost 60 years old. Like, you're a younger athlete. But bro, it's still Roy Jones Jr., man. Like, that dude still hits hard. He still has everything that, he had as a kid, just not the youth. But yeah, I mean, big respect for Roy for taking that fight. And yeah, that was another moment in my career where I'm gonna look back at it and be like, man, that was some gangster shit.
Speaking of gangster, good segue here. Any interest in boxing Nate Diaz? You guys fought in the cage a few times. Is that something that would interest you?
I actually just had Nate Diaz as a special guest out at APFC. I'm not sure, if that's something that his team wants. And me and Nate had our beef and our drama, and like in the UFC, we had our fight and we moved on, man. And like talking to him now, I think he's making fucking great money in boxing. So if it makes sense and we both can get a payday for us, of course I'd be open to that. But I got an opponent in line before him in February, and that guy's ready to go. And I'm gonna get through February 1st, and then I'll look at boxing after that. I plan on fighting 3 boxing matches this year at least.
Oh, there we go. I love it. Do you want to box any of these like influencers, like a Jake Paul or anything? Does that interest you? You're more like, hey, I want to fight like actual. I shouldn't say actual, because Jake Paul's done quite well for himself, but in general,
I was gonna say that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Jake Paul is a boxer now. He really is, right?
Yeah, so. Jake Paul is a boxer, bro. Jake Paul can box. He beat two of my teammates. So I would love to fight Jake Paul, because he beat Tyron Woodley and Ben Askren, and those guys are my training partners in mixed martial arts. So Tyron Woodley came he came over to Duke Previous' gym, and Ben Askren was one of my teammates from start. And Jake Paul knocked them both out, man. So yeah, I would love to reavenge that loss for those guys. But for me now, like whoever comes this way, boxing's such a different promotion than different sport than MMA. Like when you're in MMA, like you're kind of whoever the promotion says you got to fight. Whereas boxing, it's promoter versus promoter. Like there's guys that are trying to build their names up, and Jake Paul is probably one of the best promoters out there right now. And you got to give him props for what he's doing for even the PFL, man. Like the attention he brings over to that. So yeah, I mean, I got mad respect for Jake Paul and what he's done for the combat sports community. And as an athlete, man, he has access to some of the best coaches. Jay Love, the guy, one of his training partners, I knew him from Vegas from the Mayweather team. He had a great boxing career. So he has good guys in his corner, and he's doing his thing.
You still keep tabs on what's going on in the UFC, or are you too busy kind of focusing on your own stuff?
No, I love the UFC, bro. I'm still okay. My fight.
Let me ask you then. Let me ask you then, just because we have a couple fights coming up. I was just curious your thoughts. We've got the Colby Covington, Leon Edwards title fight coming up in a few weeks here. Do you give an edge to anyone there? Do you think Leon will keep his title? What do you make of that fight?
Man, I give the edge to Colby Covington. I think Leon's a great striker, but Colby's gas tank, his ability to get hit and not get knocked out. I think I give the edge to Colby on the wrestling, the cardio, the ground control aspect of it. I mean, besides the knockout of that, his last fight, Usman, he was losing that fight, and that was like one of those Hail Mary Chavez moments where he was losing that fight and he got that knockout. But Edwards has some crazy striking. Now his confidence is probably skyrocketed. But if I had to put money on it, if I was betting on it, I'd say Colby Covington.
Sean Strickland and Dricus for the middleweight title. Who do you like in that fight?
I like Sean Strickland, bro. Sean he's a gangster. Even though he's like on social media and steering shit up, I see him training at Extreme Couture. That dude's sparring every day like it's a fight, and you just got to respect that. Like his worth ethic is why he is where he's at.
Your old division, lightweight in the UFC, it's being run right now by Islam Makhachev, and he's coming off an impressive win over Volkanovski. What have you made of his run, and do you see anyone in the weight class beating him right now? Because he looks pretty unstoppable.
Yeah, I mean, bro, the lightweight weight class, he looks like he's that guy. But I was just talking about this earlier. when you become the champion, you get a lot of distractions. You got sponsors pulling you, got different opportunities. You have more money in your bank account. Instead of just having a dinner, you're having appetizers, a bottle of wine. So, I mean, I know he doesn't drink, but you know, it's a different beast when you're the champion, and then you have that target on your back, so everybody's training for you. So we got to see how he handles the pressure, and he has to win against some more top lightweight guys. So if we could see him beat a couple more lightweight guys, then he cements his legacy as, you know, one of the lightweight goats.
Do you think he should be number one pound for pound right now? Because there's that debate between him and Jones. I think they took him off technically because Jones is injured. But what do you think of that whole debate about Islam being the pound for pound number one guy right now?
John Jones been my number one pound for pound since he started UFC, man. I train with that guy. The way he can handle I don't want to get too personal on it, but the way he handles his pressure and the way he goes and trains, it's totally two different things, man. He could be in trouble and, you know, facing backlash from social media, but when you put him in that training room, no one's fucking with that guy, man. So I mean, John Jones is, I think Khabib's dad said it, he's a gift from God. Like, that dude's skill set is different than everybody else's. His wrestling, his striking, he's made to be a fighter, man. So yeah, John Jones is my go.
Just last UFC question. We mentioned Islam. You know, there's Khabib as well, who's sort of sort of his mentor, so to speak. Do you ever wish you could have fought either of them? You know, you fought everyone in your career, and we're talking here about you fighting in karate combat and doing boxing. Is that, you know, are those two opponents maybe you wish you could have fought at some point just to see how it would go?
Yeah, you know, Khabib, we almost fought. It was actually in Brooklyn when Connor threw that.
I remember that. I was at that card,
Yeah,
actually. I remember when that
so
happened. Yeah.
Chiesa was my opponent, and then Chiesa gets cut from the piece of glass, and they offered me versus Khabib, and I wasn't training for a guy like Khabib, and I knew at that time in my career, I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to take I've done it too many times. I'm not going to take a dumb fight where I could put myself at risk. And in the UFC, bro, you're only as good as your last fight. Well, in combat sports, you're only good as your last fight. So yeah, I wish I could have had that chance, but a full training camp against Khabib. Like, if I could have had, you know, Ben Askren in my corner, training, getting that wrestling feel the whole camp, and then fighting a guy like Khabib, I would have loved that fight. Another guy that got away, Conor McGregor, man, I never got to fight him too. Like, our paths didn't cross. He came up to the lightweight division kind of while I was exiting. So another guy that for sure, I mean, those two are the guys that I wish I would have fought.
You're a manager now, which I think is so cool. And one of the guys that I know you work with is Christian Rodriguez, who's just been on an absolute tear right now. How far do you see him going right now in the UFC? Because a lot of people have a lot of high expectations for him after those last couple of performances.
Yeah, the sky's the limit for that kid, man. Honestly, he just has to get his head right. As long as he gets his head right and he's mentally sharp, we're gonna figure out the weight situation. I think his next fight's gonna go to 145. But you know, that kid's talented. So I mean, I just sparred with him on Monday. I was in Milwaukee on Monday for just to get some sparring in. He's getting better and better. Like, even his striking, you know, his ground and how poised he is on his skill set. You know, he doesn't let guys, you know, even if he's supposed to lose the striking, he doesn't let guys, you know, intimidate him. He goes out there and he does his thing. And he's training with Sergio Pettis. He's training with Duke Rufus. The gym right now in Rufus Sport is kind of made around those two guys, Sergio Pettis and Christian Rodriguez. So he's getting all the attention. He's getting all the things he needs to be a champion. So the sky's the limit for that kid. We'll see him back in March, I think, is his next fight. And yeah, I'm excited to see, you know, what he can continue doing.
My last question here, and I know we've gone over time, but how do you balance everything, man? You're doing boxing, you're doing karate combat, you're a manager, you run a promotion, which, by the way, I hear fighters rave about your promotion all the time, which is so cool to hear. How do you do it, man? Is it Google Calendar? How do you keep yourself organized?
Man, I got a great team, bro. My wife is one of my biggest support systems. You know, she allows me to do all this crazy shit. And, you know, she always asks me, like, hey, when you're going to retire? But I love this, man. Combat sports is my life. The challenge of boxing and, you know, doing karate combat is also like a thing that I love to do as well. But being able, like, all my experience, and I think, you know, once my career is done, I think guys will look at my career and be like, man, this guy did it right. You know, like, I figured out how to make it work with all the. I mean, I got a UFC Fight Pass deal for my fight promotion. I got a PFL contract. I got a karate combat contract. I'm gonna be boxing again this year, so I kind of just took control of my own career. And, you know, I think, you know, when you get to that spot, you figure out how to build your support system. So I got a great team behind APFC. Damian Rodriguez, one of my partners in APFC. I just partnered with Chris Angel. So in 2024, me and Chris Angel are announcing our partnership. So another huge power move on my side. So we'll be doing shows on the Las Vegas Strip in his theater at Planet Hollywood. So I'll have a couple of shows here. With the management company, man, I got another great team behind me, and I know what fighters need because I've done it. You know, I know what guys need in their career. I know what they're looking for. I know what their end game should be and how we get to that. And you know, I think the fighters are taking to that, and I appreciate that. You know, these guys are believing in me to manage their careers.
Karate Combat 43, December 15th in Vegas. Anthony, thanks so much for doing this. If there's anything you want to plug, any sponsors, any social media you want to mention, I'll give you the last word, man.
Yeah, Karate Combat, December 15th. That's all I'm focused on right now. I'm less than 2 weeks away from tomorrow. I'm less than 2 weeks away, going all in on this one. You know, this rule set is allowing me to be the best version of myself. So make sure you guys tune in. You know, whenever I fight, it's showtime. So make sure you guys tune in on that.